my friends, and welcome to Postscript. I'm John Petersen from the Arlington Institute, and it's nice to have you with us. We've got an interview today with our friend Jeff Witzeman, and who's coming to be with us at Transition Talks here at the Arlington Institute on the 22nd of February. And Jeff hails from Southern California. Hi, Jeff. How are you, my friend?
Hey, John, doing good. Thank you.
Well, it's nice to see you again. Nice to have you here. We've a little off camera talking about the weather. We're surrounded by snow here today, just a little 3 inches, but it's a nice kind of wintry run that we missed at Christmas time, I guess.
Mm.
Here in here in our part of the Appalachian Mountains, all this goes away within about a day, and so it's kind of decorative, I guess, at best, but. It's nice to see you. What you been thinking about, my friend? What's on your mind?
Yeah, I've just been working here on the farm. We've got our avocado trees coming in season. We got a lot of avocados, and we've got a healing center where people are coming to get healed. And a lot of times people want to know how to set up their estates. They want to know how they can lawfully engage with this, if you want to call it a matrix, if you want to
Right.
call it just the world that is kind of in lockstep agreement on how they want us to behave, that is disconnected from our inalienable rights. And so I spend a lot of time on the phone and with people in person talking about what's possible. And, we've all been so indoctrinated into believing for so long that we don't have rights, that we have to do whatever they tell us. And, most people start to understand that all law is fraud, all banking is fraud, all healthcare is fraud. And the IRS, for some reason, isn't telling us all the information about taxes. Now, why would they do that? So it doesn't matter what angle people come from. We have had some really good discussions about what's possible, right? Because people don't even know what's possible if no one has gone down the road to explore that.
Absolutely, absolutely. The whole system is trying to convince them of the other reality, if you will, and what you've got is the emergent new kind of reality, and that's why we're so excited about having you here on the 22nd of February, because what you represent is a whole new way of thinking that is really structural, fundamental to the way we all live on this planet, and in general, in the United States in particular. And and so that's what you're going to be talking about, and we're looking forward to that.
Yeah, thank you. And I think my situation is kind of unique because I had to go down this path, down this road, because my wife got cancer and they wanted to kill her. I made a film about healing her cancer naturally, and they banned me on Amazon, Vimeo, and platforms. And so at some point, I wanted to breathe fresh air, and they told me I couldn't breathe fresh air. So at some point, I had to find a way for myself to go against everything and to find a new path where I wouldn't be bothered, where I could live my life freely and help other people the way I want to help them.
Yeah.
And so my path over the last 3 years has really been fundamentally on law. What is law? What is the government? What is the IRS? And how do we interrelate with them in a way that takes care of our inalienable rights?
So what is the IRS?
The IRS is an offshore corporation
Oh,
that we have no allegiance to whatsoever. They bully us. They try to take us down a false narrative. And the answer to the IRS is to give them back their own laws to show them what they can or cannot do. And since 99.9% of the accountants out there and CPAs run according to the narrative, as do the attorneys, it's a bit of a trick to find that 0.01% of the accountants that know the actual law.
Mm.
But when you find them, and when you start to go down that path um, of exposing the IRS and showing what's actually possible. For example, if you operate out of a trust, the IRS will give you back dollar for dollar what you spend. So at that point, why do you even need a job, right? Because if you spend 50,000 a year and they give you back 50,000 a year, where's the rub? So this is where we're all headed, and it's just a matter of time, right? So I'm not even afraid.
Can you buy an airplane?
And you can buy an airplane and then get that money back, right?
Oh, that's what I want. That's what I want.
Another airplane, sure.
Yeah.
So, the reason that I can speak as freely as I do right now is that the genie's already out of the bottle, and they know they can't stop it. And the only way I would get in trouble is if I was a grifter, or I was trying to make money, or I was trying to cheat somebody. And I come from a place of I don't need money per se. I'm not a grifter. I'm not selling a bunch of classes. I'm in this for the spiritual connection. I'm in this to help everybody, all humanity, connect with our true purpose. So there's really very little they can do to me anymore other than ban me on Amazon and Vimeo. And I found ways to operate in the private, create my own website. And so now I'm living the good life. And I'm really happy to see that the house of cards is falling down, and we're inevitably moving towards this path of complete
This is
disclosure.
wonderful. Yeah, this is really kind of wonderful. Do you think we live in a simulation? Is this really a matrix and this is all just the way it works?
Well, we definitely live in a carefully constructed, organized um, situation where the media and the government and the lawyers, they're all on the same page saying the same thing. So how would you break free? Whether you want to call that a simulation or intense mind control, either way, it's a situation where we've been completely controlled, and it's such higher level the way that they've constructed the whole system that it's really hard to penetrate it and figure out where the lie is, where the fraud is.
Yeah,
And so we really
they've had a long time to build this up.
They have, and so I think as humanity, we needed some sort of frequency lifting, if you want to call it the Schumann resonance,
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it. Something came in to our presence in the last 5 to 10 years, and we've been able to see things we haven't seen before. And so that's why I'm optimistic about the House of Cards coming down.
Well, there are waves of energy coming out of the center of the galaxy. They've measured it, they're measuring them. And so they hit us directly, hit the Earth and humans directly, and they affect DNA and other aspects of, almost every aspect of the planet, including Earth changes, things like earthquakes and volcanoes and such. They affect the sun. And so the sun gives off different cosmic rays or, different kinds of energy than it has in the past. And so what that does is then changes the energetic kind of environment that we're in. And, there's a combination of these kinds of things that are clearly reconditioning the space, if you will, that have the distinct possibility of giving us a chance to kind of jump out of this structure, this matrix-like structure. And so this is very interesting what you're talking about.
Yeah, and there's an order I find to these events. For example, you can't be in the throes of an addiction or some lifestyle situation where you're dependent on a source for love or money that is not aligned with your true spiritual nature. You can't go from there to, oh, I want all my money back from the IRS now. It's like There's layers, and it starts with this sort of this emotional, spiritual layer of detaching ourselves from all the programming we've been given, detaching ourselves from the parasitic ways that they've infiltrated us and told us we have to get our money or our love or our energy from.
Yeah.
So we got to pull all that back first, right? And get it all back here, get our pineal gland back in shape so that now we're seeing clearly. Now we can sense clearly. Okay, from that position, right, we can start to dip our foot in the water and say, okay, what is a trust? How is America a trust? Who are we in that trust? Are we beneficiaries? Well, then who's the trustee? Well, then what obligations do they have to us? And then we can start to form our own trust. And then we start to learn the secrets that the elites have had for years of protecting their money, of keeping everything in the private, of protecting their assets. And once we go down that road, then we can start to understand where we stand. And then we can go to the higher levels, discharging debt, because HJR 192 says that all debt has been paid for. When America went from an asset-backed situation to a credit-based fiat dollar, they said, okay, all debt has been paid for. Well, what does that mean? How do we make that work for us? How do we actually discharge debt? We can get to that level. And then once we get to that level, then we can get to the level of with the IRS, where now the IRS works in our favor. They start to go to that Cesta K trust account that was created from the birth certificate, and they start to give us money back from that birth certificate account, which is worth 150 million for most of us, if not more. So there's levels to all this. The mistake people make is, oh, okay, I don't want to have a driver's license anymore. I don't want the cops to bother me. I want to discharge debt and I want the IRS to give me money. It doesn't work that way. It's like this is a long, slow process with this evolution of consciousness, but it's possible. We just have to have the patience to be willing to kind of work through it one step at a time.
Are you familiar with Martin Armstrong, Jeff?
I don't know, Martin.
Martin Armstrong is an economist, got a website called armstrongeconomics.com. And he's down in Florida. And Marty is 40 years ago built what he calls the first AI. He was running a hedge fund and turned out to be the kind of the largest financial advisory outfit on the planet. And he's always had a bigger kind of picture. He looks at this stuff and he doesn't interpret it. This is kind of like, he doesn't layer kind of an analytical layer on top of it and say, well, I think he just describes what it says. And what it says, interestingly enough, is that there is this huge debt overhang, that this sovereign debt, and it's a crisis, and it's sovereign in terms of the different countries and central banks and so on. And it has gotten to the place where it is so large that it's impossible to pay it back. In the United States now, some estimates are as much as almost 50% of the revenue that's generated by the IRS goes to paying the interest on the 33 trillion, $35 trillion worth of debt that we have. And there's no way in the world it's going to get paid back. And so what you're talking about is kind of a crack in the whole kind of foundation of the system that is consistent with these ideas of a large scale turnover. And so it's just really kind of exciting to hear about this, and we're going to have a good time when you come and be with us.
Yeah, thank you. And there's certainly a lot of different scenarios that I've heard, even from insiders, that apart from 2027, starting January 20th, we're going to be on the path to an asset-backed currency, as are the BRICS nations. And they're already, it's already in the works to have other ways of moving money rather than the SWIFT system, the Ripple system. And so gosh, I get a sense this is going to happen way before 2027, and they are
Yeah.
going to change this. They're going to get rid of the Jubilee is going to be removing things like property taxes and debt and starting fresh. My question, John, is where is the pain going to be and who's going to feel it? Because there has to be some pain felt somewhere, right? Are people going to lose their retirement accounts? I mean, what you can't go from that old system to the new system because the old system was smoke and mirrors. It was magic. There was no actual physical anything.
Well, the indications are that, in fact, that the pension funds are really quite vulnerable to all of this. In part, Marty talks about is the fact that they've all been built and structured in such a way that they have to hold their assets almost exclusively in terms of government instruments of one sort or another. The assumption at the time that they were built being that was the safest place to be. Well, this is now the worst place to be, and they can't be in the markets where they can take advantage of appreciation and so on. And so the whole thing is very dicey.
Yeah, more will be revealed on that front.
Yeah, I think so.
So yeah, when I do come out there, I'm really looking forward to, first of all, laying out the landscape and just sharing the way it's all set up, because I don't think people know, I don't think they have any idea that they've been thrust into a position of being a debtor, of being a legal fiction, of being a business entity. They're not human beings. And so how do we get back to becoming human beings, living men and women? And then how do we interact with a justice system that doesn't view us as living? And so I think once I make the landscape clear, once people know what's actually going on and what I've been able to do in the last few years, and then going back even 10 years with the health and the medical mafia, once I'm able to sort of share with people what's really going on, then people can have informed consent, right? And
Right.
then they can know, oh, okay, well, then here's the path forward I want to take. And it's not the same path as I'm going to take, as someone else is going to take. We're all going to have our own paths. But now it'll be from the standpoint of, okay, I no longer consent to this matrix where I am just if you want to call it a slave, or if you want to
Right.
can call it a controlled entity, that's not who I am. And so now the whole satanic cabal runs on consent. And the moment we pull that consent back, they have no more power. So that's what I want to do. I want to empower people with the knowledge of what's really going on.
Well, this is really important because what you're describing is an important and integral aspect of the emergence of essentially a new human being. This is about sovereignty. This is about redo of who you think you are and how you understand how the larger reality works. And so it's happening in this area where you're talking about, and you've alluded to the fact that you really don't need a driver's license or a license plate on your car, because that's only if you're in the business of commerce. And so unless you're driving a taxi cab, or a truck, then you really don't. And those kinds of things are enough to kind of stand you up and say, what do you mean I don't need a driver's license or a thing? And the things that you're talking about are the outline of an emergent new understanding of who we are and how this all works. And that is the beginning of the biggest change in probably human history, or at least recorded history. This is a
Absolutely.
really, really big deal.
Absolutely. And once the police understand who's running the show, and that the police have no free will, and that they're just keeping a system alive that's enslaving humanity, it's going to be really nice to see the police say, okay, no more. We're not going to be a part of this. And when attorneys start learning that they're part of enforcing the slave system, it's going to be really fun to see those attorneys step out and go, okay, no more. We're gonna do something different. Um, it could be
Well,
this
but
year.
this is on one hand, because we're such a part of this whole system, when you talk in those kinds of terms, it's you kind of get tight inside a little bit, and you say, well, how does that work, and why, what then, and you have all these kinds of things. But this is an integral, predictable part of how the big changes happen on this planet, and have always happened. It's just it has a unique kind of character because of the fact that we're all wired into everything, and we got the internet and all of the other kind of aspects of the IT world that we live in. But somebody could do a PhD dissertation, I'm sure, on the parallels between the fall of the Roman Empire or whatever it is, the big transitions from one thing to another one, and you certainly the financial system and the currencies and representative legal and political system, all of those things kind of change. So on one hand, it's not a surprise. It's just when you're inside the middle of it, then it's interesting to kind of hang on and trying to figure out which way the thing is all going to jerk and run next.
Yeah, and there's a whole lot of people that we don't hear about who have already figured out how to leave the current system and start a new one.
Oh,
And
wow.
and we're starting to
Same
hear
way.
about them. People like Salinger, this regenerative farmer,
Mm.
and the fact that he's going to be a part of the new Health and Human Services, or the FDA, or the farming community. Um, there are people just waiting in the wings to come on, to people's nightly television and say, hey, look, here's the new paradigm, and it works. And I'm going to help usher you from that old system to the new system. So, I'm optimistic that we're not all just going to be in horror, shaking our heads, going, what do we do now?
Yeah,
It's
right.
like, no, we've got people out there that have already started the process.
Yeah. Well, this is going to really be fun, and we're looking forward to having you here on the 22nd of February. For for our viewers here, this is Transition Talks. This is a monthly speaker series that we host here in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, our little resort town that's about 100 miles from Washington and Baltimore. And so you can come and have a good time, and and go to our spas, all the things that we do around here. But if you can't make it, then it's available by live stream. And so we have people all over the world who follow this, and we'd love to have you a part of that. You can find out information about it at transitiontalks.org. And we'd love to have you. And we're going to have a genuinely good time when you're with us here next month, Jeff. And thanks for coming by for a chance here to chat a little bit about it.
You bet. Thank you, John.
Take care.